sometimes some of these problems you just can't figure out the factors. I watched some of y'all sit there for 5 minutes trying to figure out what multiplies to give me the last number and adds to give me the middle number. Don't sit there that long trying to figure that out. Quadratic formula, the quadratic formula will always work. Now, the problem with the quadratic formula is you gotta learn the quadratic formula, okay? But there are lots of neat little songs out there. I am not a singer. I'm sorry. I'm not going to sing for you this morning. But if you want to watch them, just YouTube, look up Quadratic Formula Song. They've got them to Pop Goes the Weasel. They got it to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I found one yesterday to One Direction. What was the song? I can't remember which song it was, but it was to a One Direction song. A teacher had set the quadratic formula to that song. So if that works for you, or if you just need to straight up memorize it, that is absolutely fine. But we're going to use the quadratic formula here. The key is it's still got to be equal to 0 in order to solve it. Okay, so if it's not equal to 0, you've got to move everything to one side or the other so that it's equal to 0. Let me remind you of our standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c. A is the coefficient with the x squared. B is the coefficient with the x. C is the constant on the end. If any of those are missing, they're 0. Okay? If you don't have an x term, b is 0. If you don't have a c term on the end, c is 0. Here's your quadratic formula. It's solving for x. It's telling you what the value of x is equals negative b. What that really means is this number is not always going to be negative. Okay, this is not always going to be negative. It's the opposite of b. So if b was negative, it's going to become positive. If b was positive, it's going to become negative. Okay, plus or minus, that's where our two solutions are going to come from. We add the square root and we subtract the square root. Under the square root, this entire expression right here is under the square root. So when you type that into your calculator, you're going to have to put some parentheses. Okay? B squared minus 4 times A times C. And that is all over 2A. So a couple of things about putting in the calculator. You're going to have to put your 2A in parentheses, and you're going to have to put this entire numerator in parentheses as well if you're typing it in all at one time. Okay, if you're typing it in all at one time. So you need to write this somewhere on your worksheet or in your notes or somewhere. You need to have this quadratic formula written down. I really need to have a poster of it on my wall up here, but you got to memorize it. They're not going to give it to you on the final exam. So if you want to use it, you've got to memorize it. You've got to know what it is if you're going to use it on the final exam. They're not going to give you that formula. You got to memorize it. Okay? So like I said, I know a lot of you love music. And you can memorize music lyrics. Oh my goodness, how many music lyrics do you have memorized in your head right now? As soon as the song comes on, you start singing. Well, you learn this to a song, you're going to learn it. You're going to memorize it a lot easier than just trying to sit down and memorize it, I promise. So look up YouTube, quadratic formula song. That's your homework for tonight. Okay, so let's use this. Let's look at number 21. Let's look at number 21 on your worksheet there. We've got 9x squared plus 22 is equal to negative 4x minus 8 plus 11x squared. We got a lot of terms on both sides. Now, let's do this. I still don't like dealing with a negative a. I don't like that x squared term being negative. So on this problem, I'm going to move everything to the right side. So I'm going to subtract the 9x squared from both sides. It's gone on the left side. I'm going to subtract 22 from both sides. Notice how I line this up. I'm putting it under its like term. I put the 9x squared under the 11x squared. I put the 22 under the 8. I'm pairing them up, so I don't have anything left on the left side. 0 equals. I'm going to write this in standard form when I simplify these. So my x squared comes first. I've got positive 11 minus 9. That leaves me with 2x squared. Next comes my x term. Well, I didn't do anything to that one, so it just comes down. Minus 4x. And then my constant term, I've got minus 8 minus 22. That's minus 30. Now, some of you may think this is overkill, but it's good practice. After you get that equal to 0, come over to the side and write down what your a, b, and c are. A is 2. It's the coefficient in front of x squared. B is negative 4. You got to get that sign that's in front of it. And C is negative 30. You got to get the sign that's in front of it. All right, so let's plug this into our quadratic formula now. X equals, write it down on your paper. Don't try and type it all into the calculator, okay? So, negative b, we changed the sign of b. B was originally negative 4, so we change its sign. It's positive 4. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. Put parentheses around b before you square it. Minus 4 times a times c. All that's under the square root. And the entire thing here, all the way from the beginning to the end, is over 2 times a. And I'm going to write it with parentheses around it, so I remember to put parentheses around it here in a second if I'm going to type that all into the calculator. Now, I'm going to just type in what is under the square root right now. Okay, I'm going to just type in what's under the square root into my calculator, because a lot of times they leave this in square root form. So, parentheses negative 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 30. Negative 4 in parentheses squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 30 gives me 256. And I know 2 times 2 is 4. So let's see if 256 is a perfect square. The square root of 256, I know it's not on my poster. My poster doesn't go that high. It is. The square root of 256 is a whole number. It is 16. So the square root of 256 is 16. So here are my two solutions. 4 plus 16 divided by 4, which is 4 plus 16 is 20. Divided by 4 is 5. So one of my answers is 5. My other answer is 4 minus 16 over 4. Bless you. 4 minus 16 is negative 12. Negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3. 5 and negative 3 are my answers. Guess what? If you get whole numbers when you do the quadratic formula, that means that this could have been factored. Okay? It means that it could have been factored. If you get whole numbers, it could have been factored. But it's okay. I'm showing you that the quadratic formula works as well. Now let me show you something on the calculator. Notice I did this by hand. Okay, 4 minus 16 divided by 4. If you just type that straight into the calculator like this, with no parentheses or anything, it gives you 0. 0 is not the correct answer. You have to put parentheses because it's 4 minus 16, because you have more than one term in the numerator. You got to put parentheses around it. That gives you the correct answer of negative 3. Okay, so either break it down piece by piece, or don't forget your parentheses. Don't forget your parentheses. Okay, let's do another example. Okay, number 22. I don't have a ton of these to show you because I really want you to spend a lot of time practicing. Okay, 15p squared minus 9p minus 23 is equal to 9p squared. Whew. Not as much to move on this one. We only got one term that we need to move. We need to move that 9p squared. So we subtract it from both sides. 15 minus 9 is 6. 6p squared minus 9p minus 23 equals 0. Please, please, please come over here to this side and tell me what A, B, and C are. A is 6, B is negative 9, and C is negative 23. The reason why I want you to do this is when I give you a quiz on this, if you don't get the final answer right, but I can see that you at least identified A, B, and C correctly, okay, I know you got half the process going. You're just struggling a little bit with the quadratic formula, but you know how to set it up. The problem is elsewhere. But if I don't know what your A, B, and C are, I'm just going to have to count the whole problem wrong, okay? So go ahead and go over to the side and write that down. All right, quadratic formula. X equals the opposite of B. So positive 9 plus or minus the square root of B squared. Put that negative 9 in parentheses. I cannot stress that enough. I cannot stress that enough. That will throw off your quadratic formula every time. Minus 4 times A is 6 times C is negative 23. All over 2 times A, which is 6. Okay, so we're breaking this down. We're just going to type in what's under the square root and see what we get. Negative 9 in parentheses, squared, minus 4 times 6 times negative 23. We get 633. And 2 times 6 is 12. All right, 633. Let's see if that's a perfect square. Try and take the square root of it. Doesn't give us a whole number. Okay, does not give us a whole number. So that means that's how we're going to leave this answer. Okay, that's how we're going to leave this answer. Now, you can probably simplify that square root, and if you can simplify the square root, then they're going to do it. Okay, they are going to do it on the answer key. I'm not going to go through that part right now, okay, because I just want you to get the quadratic formula down pat. So how do you know whether your answer is the same or not? Well, you're going to get the decimal approximation is what you're going to do. So you're going to do 9 plus the square root of 633, press enter, and divide it by 12. And you're going to write it down. You're going to say x is approximately 2.847. And then you're going to do 9 minus the square root of 633 and divide it by 12. And that's your other one. Negative 1.347. And then you're going to look at your answer choices, and you're going to type them in, and you're going to see which one matches. Okay? So my suggestion when you're typing these in, just type in the numerator, press enter. Whoops, might help if my 3 was there. Okay, there we go. Press enter, and then divide by the denominator. Okay? That's the easiest way to make sure you're not going to make a mistake. Find out what the numerator equals, press enter, divide it by the denominator. Okay, and then you're just going to compare them. Okay, compare them to the answer choices. All right, let's do one more, 23. Okay, we've got 12x is equal to 11x plus 8 plus 4x squared. All right, so we need to move everything to the right side, so that means I'm going to subtract 12x. from both sides. So I've got 0 on the left. It's not in standard form, so I got to rewrite it. My x squared comes first. That's positive 4x squared. Next comes our x. So 11 minus 12 is negative 1x, and then plus 8 on the end. So a is 4. What's b? Negative 1. And c is positive 8. So let's set up the quadratic formula. X equals the opposite of b. It was negative 1, so it's positive 1. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 1 squared. Don't forget the parentheses. Don't forget the parentheses. Minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is 8. All over 2 times a, which is 4. Break it down. Find out what's under the square root. Negative 1 in parentheses squared minus 4 times 8. Negative 127. We haven't run into that yet. All over 2 times 4, which is 8. Now, you've probably heard that you can't take the square root of a negative number, right? Right. Okay. So that is true. But remember when I was telling you the other day that there's this whole thing called imaginary solutions? Okay, when it doesn't cross the x-axis, there are no real solutions, but there are what we call imaginary solutions. Anytime there is a negative under the square root, you are automatically going to put an I in front of that square root, and the negative goes away. Okay, so we take the square root of negative 127, the negative comes out, and it becomes I. Okay, the negative comes out, and it becomes I. I don't think 100, or actually I know 127 is not a perfect square, so I got to leave it the way it is. So if I want to compare, I can still do this in my calculator. Okay, you can still do this in your calculator. I believe, let's see here. Let's see if this works. 1 plus, there's a little I above your decimal. If you press second decimal, that's where the I is. So 1 plus second decimal for the I, square root of 127. Notice it sticks a little I on the end, and we divide that by 8. That's what we're going to compare to our answer choices. Okay? So we automatically eliminate any answer choices that don't have an I in them, and then that's what we're going to compare. That's the number we're going to compare right there. The I doesn't show up, but see these dots? If you use your right arrow, scroll over a little bit, okay, that's where the rest of the problem is. So it still has an I on it, it couldn't all fit on the screen there. Okay, that's what you're going to compare to your answer choices. Easy enough? All right, so